In the previous lecture, we have seen the protection scheme which is utilized by zones, as well as we are providing the circuit breakers for or the zones for each element. Along with that, for the better protection which must be provided to the system, we are having the zone overlapping. But again, there are chances that whatever may be the protective gears we have applied, they may fail to operate. As that scheme is called as the primary protection scheme. So, for again ensuring the protection of the power system or the equipments, we are providing some backup protections also. So, there are three types of backup protections, and that are namely, first is called as the remote backup, second is called as the relay backup, and third is called as the bus bar backup, sorry, the breaker backup. So remote backup is nothing but we are providing the relays for providing the additional backup which are situated at the near or the neighboring substations. These relays are having their own circuit breaker as well as the CT, PT and all the accessories. This is the cheapest type of and the simplest type of the backup protection, and it is most desirable because the fact that it will not fail due to the factors causing the failure of the primary protection. Next is nothing but the relay backup. So if the protected zone is situated far away from the neighboring substations, then it's impossible to provide a remote backup because it becomes costly as well as the performance may be lower down. That's why we are providing the additional relays which are provided for the backup protection and that are operating the same circuit breaker for which we already provided the primary backup. This system is having a costly system because for that relays we have to provide their separate CTs as well as PTs. But along with that, we are also taking one important precaution that the secondary or the backup relays must having the operating principle different than the primary relays, because whatever may be the causes which are not operating the primary relays, if we are providing the backup relay with the same operating principle, the same factor will also affect the backup relay also. So to ensure the operation of the backup relay within a less time, we are providing the backup relay which is having the different operating principle than the primary relay. Third is nothing but the breaker backup. So it is again one kind of the local backup system. Here we are providing the additional equipments for the circuit breaker backup, and if the protective relay is not operating for the fault and the circuit breaker fails to trip, in that case that fault is treated as a busbar fault, and as it is treated as a busbar fault, then it is desired that whatever may be the circuit breakers placed for the protection of that busbar, all must be tripped and the faulty section must be isolated within the minimum time. So these are three types of the backup system or the backup protection, that are nothing but the remote backup, relay backup and the breaker backup. So these relays must have some essential quantities. So we will see that. So the essential quantities of the protection system or the relays are six properties are there like this. First is the selectivity, the next is the speed of operation, then it is the sensitivity, then the real sorry reliability, then the simplicity, and last is nothing but the economy. So these six parameters must be possessed by each and every protective schemes. So starting with the first, selectivity, that means your protection scheme must be able to simply detect the portion on which or the section of the power system on which the fault is occurred, and that only fault or the section must be disconnected by the protective system as early as possible. So the selectivity is the ability of the protective system to select correctly that part of the system which is in the trouble and disconnected the faulty part without disturbing the rest of the system. Next is nothing but the speed. the speed of operation must be as minimum as possible, because when the fault occurs on the system, it creates the voltage imbalance as well as the current imbalance, as well as in case of the open circuit fault, the voltages will be increased beyond the limits, as well as in case of short circuit fault, the heavy currents flows through the circuit. So there are various effects of the high current as well as high voltage on each and every equipment. So as long as the high voltages will be applied across the apparatus as well as the high currents will flow through the circuit, they will damage this equipments as well as circuit dangerously. That's why our protection system must having the high speed of operation. It must disconnect the faulty sections within fraction of seconds. So this is the second desirable essential quantity for the power system, sorry, protection system. Next is the sensitivity. The sensitivity is nothing but the ability of the power protection system to sense a small change in the variation in the electrical parameters. So it must sense a small abnormality which is experienced by the power system. It is the ability of the relay system to operate with a low value of the actuating quantity. The sensitivity of a relay is a function of a volt ampere input of the coil and necessary to cause its operation. The smallest volt ampere input required to cause a relay operation and the more sensitivity of the relay. Thus, 1 volt ampere relay is more sensitive than a 3 volt ampere relay. And it is desired that the system must be sensitive so that it operates within the low value of volt ampere input. Next is the reliability. The reliability is the ability of relay in the operating system or the protection system under predetermined condition. Without reliability, the protection would be rendered largely ineffective and could even becomes liability. We must rely the protection scheme. That means we must ensure that whatever the protection we have provided must be accurate and it must provide a definite protection, and that is nothing but the reliability of the system. Next is the simplicity. No complications will be there. The circuit or the protection scheme must be simple. The relaying system should be simple so that it can be easily maintained, and the reliability is closely related to the simplicity. The simpler the protection scheme, the greater will be the reliability. That means we must provide the less number of accessories along with the protective relays or the protective gears. Next, the last parameter is nothing but the economy. Economy is the most important factor of each and every system. That means whatever the protection scheme we are providing must having the least cost as compared to the total system. We always consider that the total cost of protection system must be maximally 5% to the cost of the power system. So these are some important factors as well as backup protection we are discuss here. Next topic we will discuss in the next lecture.